And that's literally how we run the podcast also. We just kind of like roll right into it. I say like Joe Rogan. I still haven't seen a Joe Rogan episode and I probably will never. But nothing against him. He's also like a king of like anti-cancellation. He's like whatever.
Yeah, these people are like Teflon for cancellation, just like rebounds off them, you know what I mean?
Not Teflon. Yeah, the forever chemicals. Like I don't know if that like PFAS, you're like, yeah, we're like we can't die.
Literally, they just multiply, like,
Exactly.
or their philosophy. I also have never seen Joe Rogan other than maybe like one 10-second clip of, I think it was him, right? Who was like smoking up with Elon Musk.
Yes, that was on
I
the
guess it's,
yeah.
yes, that's that's all I've been served.
That's all I've seen. I think I got pieces of the
Yeah.
Donald Trump interview from like YouTube where it was just like clips or someone else was making commentary on it, just like analyzing how Donald Trump essentially hijacks conversations and used like the Joe Rogan example before he won the election this time around. And I was like, mm. Um, but yeah, if you haven't read Art of the Deal, you should also read that. Something that could get me canceled. But I'm like, people are like, don't read Donald Trump's book. I was like, no, you need to read the work of your enemies. Like, how are you expected to stay strong if you don't study your enemies?
I am completely on the same page. Like, I'm very curious and I like to read a whole range of things. Like, otherwise you do just end up in these echo chambers. You know what I mean? It's always
Right.
interesting to like try and understand other perspectives. There's always things to learn, even if the thing to learn is like run in the opposite direction, you know?
Yeah. Yes. Amazing. Well, Emily, I'm so glad that you're here. And shout out to Emma, who brought us together
Yes.
and said that we would be a
The
good match. And
master
she was completely
sister.
right. Exactly. The
Well,
master.
the great collab. Here's hopefully another great collab, you and me. So shout out Emma.
Shout out Emma. Yes, I'm sure this will be an amazing collab. But the way I want to do this today, you gave so many good ideas and I know that we could hit all of them. Like the one part of my brain that was like, let's organize literally everything. I was like, okay, I'm just going to put like 3 down, which I texted you. That will like go through and I'm sure we'll hit all of the other pieces that you suggested. Um I don't like going super deep into like intros because I'm just like read someone's bio or like do their homework and like find out about them. But I do want you to introduce yourself and like say what your title is because of course you are a creative, which means you can call yourself like 40 different things. But can you give us your name and what you do and what you're known for?
Okay, my name is Emily Nabnian, and I would say I was previously known for design, art direction, writing, strategy, all the multi hyphenate stuff in that category. And I am now an entrepreneur, bootstrapped, and kind of harnessing all of the skills that I became known for in the past towards this new mission.
And that's a very recent transition.
Yes, I mean, officially like 2 weeks old, but it's kind of been like a lifetime in the making, which is like how I feel even about those previous things that I did. Like, I feel very late to the game in some respects because like I had a very traditional education. Like, I didn't even like consciously know that I was creative. I didn't know the terms for like graphic designer, art director, curator, whatever it may be. That came to me much later, but I had been doing all of these things and like collecting and studying my whole life without really knowing what it was called. And I kind of feel the same way about like entrepreneurship. It was actually the thing that I always wanted to do. And like the things that I've done in the past were skills that I always wanted to harness towards this. So I kind of got swept up with some of those roles and entered those worlds more deeply than I had initially intended. But now I feel like rerouted back to what I'm doing now, which is a whole new journey. But everything that I've done has been like with a long term vision of pushing it in this direction.
Hey, I feel the same way. I mean, when I was growing up, I've always wanted to be like I wanted to be an entrepreneur just because my dad told me that term, but like I
My
always
dad was
gravitated
an
towards like
entrepreneur. Yeah.
amazing. I love
Like,
that.
yeah, big inspiration.
What did he do?
Well, so it's kind of funny. Like, my parents, my dad's Thai, my mom is English, and my mom just like went on this trip to Thailand like before she was supposed to go work for KPMG or something like that. Then my dad, who has like a really unique story, he left home when he was 9 and became a Buddhist monk for 10 years, and then he was like a trekking guide, and they got together, and my mom never went back to the UK, and they came up with this idea to start a Thai cooking school, which was like the first one in Chiang Mai at that time. And he's had many entrepreneurial pursuits since then, but that's like what they did together, and they really grew that. And so that was the environment that I grew up in.
Wait, does that still exist?
Not anymore, as but it went for like 30 years. And my dad, it's funny because like he never had a background in cooking, but he turned out to be like very talented at it. And so like when I was young, he was on this TV show called like The Thai Way. And it was, I think it was like aired on National Geographic or something. And like I was a kid at the time, and we would like travel around parts of Thailand while he was like doing this cooking show.
No, I was asking if it still exists because one of my like dreams, like like the happiest version of my life, if I can like optimize like
Mm.
what a rich life looks like for me, it's flying to each of the countries of my favorite cuisine. Thai food is some of
Mm.
my favorite cuisine, and then like learning from like a chef how to like make my favorite food. So I was like, "Oh my god, is this like do I have to
Oh,
add this specifically to the
well,
list?"
my uncles still, they also now have cooking schools and they still run theirs, but I could also give you a master class because I never cooked my whole life until fairly recently. And I actually like just said to a friend the other day, I was like, if I wasn't doing all of the things that I'm doing, I feel like I would start like a Thai cooking channel. That's like low key like one of my passions that I turned out to like have a knack for.
I'm disgusted that every time we talk, it's just more things that we connect on. I was like, should I fly to Toronto and just come and cook?
Well, when I come to New York, I mean, I could cook like a Thai meal for that dinner that we were talking about, like real authentic stuff. We could do it.
Let's do
And
that.
I could teach you. Like, we could do it together. I have the
Let's do
aprons,
it.
like from my parents' cooking school. I'll bring them.
Bring that. Okay, we're going to do that.
Yeah.
That's going to be, you're coming in April?
Yeah.
Okay, amazing. All right, well, I'm going to text all the girls
Yeah.
this week then. Oh my God.
Yes. Yes. Get them ready.
Okay, that's insane. So your father was an entrepreneur. That kind of
Mhm.
fostered entrepreneurship in you. You didn't really have a word for it. I think very natural for most people. Um, but were you doing like entrepreneurial stuff as a kid? Were you like working in the restaurant,
I
like,
mean,
or in the cooking school?
occasionally, like when I was really young, I would go and help my dad with the demonstrations. And like my mom also did like the business stuff. Like she was in the office, she was more like doing the kind of marketing and that kind of stuff. Um, and then yeah, my dad went on to have like other businesses in quite like sort of random areas, but he was like a very, very, very hard worker. And he would always tell me like, you have to work hard and play hard. Like you like if you just go and work for someone, like you will always have a ceiling. You have to like own your income streams, and like he really strongly believed that. So it's kind of funny, like going to school and like getting good grades or like getting into college. Like he wasn't very impressed. You know what I mean? Because like what impressed him was like independent thought and independent action. He was a very like quote unquote high agency person and really like respected that in other people.
Oh my God, I love that. I think we should define high agency people because maybe that's like not a common thing that people talk about, but there's a meme that I love where it's like this guy, it's like two panels. I keep hitting this. Two panels where one's like low agency and it's like this guy on a stranded island and he like makes the word help with like sticks and it's just like on the island. He's like waiting for someone to help him. And then the high agency guy like makes a raft out of like the help sticks and like gets himself off the island. I'm like, when I see her dad, I was like, yes, him in Thailand being like, I'm gonna just make it work.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like he went and became a monk when he was 9 because it was the like he came from a very, very poor family, like in the countryside. And so it was the only way that he could like get an education, basically, was to like go to the monastery. So yeah, he had a really crazy kind of start in life. But it made him very tough and it made him like completely unreliant on other people. You know, there are pros and cons to that, but like that energy and drive and kind of like no excuses, or if there isn't an opportunity, like create one. That was very much like an energy that was present in my childhood.
I love that. This is moderately off script, actually very off script, but I do want to ask this of you because I ask this
Mm-hmm.
of other children of immigrants or like from
Mm-hmm.
multicultural homes. I'm half Filipino and half Jamaican. My father's an immigrant. My
Oh.
grandfather and my grandmother on my mom's side are immigrants. So I feel very much like the child of immigrants. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I like have this fear that like since I'm not the immigrant myself, I'm scared that like when I have kids, I'm like, will you feel the same way that I feel when it comes to work? Because we talked about this before. I was like, my fear is that like most people like don't want to work hard, or they think that they're working
Yes.
hard, but they're really working only at like if they really ask themselves, they're only really working at like a 6 out of 10 intensity. So I wonder if you have
Mm-hmm.
like that same fear. If you even want to have kids, that's an assumption I made.
Well, you know, my whole life I wanted to have kids until recently. I'm like, I'm not sure, you know? But in terms of that, I do think about these hypothetical kids. And even something like, for example, like I speak Thai, but technically my kids would only be like a quarter Thai. And so I'm like, how am I going to like pass all these things onto you? Like, especially if we live in the West, you know? I feel like I'm so glad that I was born in Thailand and I lived there because I was very immersed with my kind of like non-Western culture. But to answer your question, yeah, when I think of myself as like a hypothetical parent, I think it's like a very different person than who I am as a person and like who I am as a friend. Like I see myself being very strict and kind of tough but fair. And like, you know, in some other respects also like very chill and cool. Like, you know, if my kid wants to dye their hair or like do things that I wasn't allowed to do, I'm like, yeah, go for it. But in terms of like the work ethic and, you know, I'll always support them, but I never want them to feel the same way that I never felt like, oh, my parents are just going to hand me my life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I wonder like this is all with the assumption of being like successful and,
Yes.
making it and doing all of the things.
Might not
But
have it given.
yeah, exactly. It's like I have like if I could give it to you, I would. But yeah, I think about that a
Yeah.
lot. And my mother, like, we were comfortable growing up. It was like, it's not like we were wealthy, 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 wealthy. And I'm not even saying that as like some wealthy people that are like, no, we were like middle class. I was like, no, we were comfortable. But like they couldn't pay for me to go to college, all of those types of things. But my mother and my father, I specifically remember my mother just like doing these little things that didn't feel like, you know, hardcore parenting. Because my mother is not intense. My father was like the intense one. But my mother would do things and I look back and I was like, wow, you really put these things forward and they built so much like resilience and resourcefulness and like grit. Like my mother, like when everyone started getting like cell phones, she was like, "Oh, you can't have a
Mm,
cell phone. Like you can't have a cell phone. Um, but you can go do these social things. But at this time, you need to call me from someone else's phone and give me an update of how you're like doing." So it like forced me to like talk to strangers and like be mindful of time and like all these things. And I was like, oh my, she was like, yeah, I just didn't want to like pay for a phone bill. I was like, mom, that was such a good thing. She's like, yeah, go hang out with your friends, but like in the next 45 minutes, call me and, memorize my phone number and like find a phone and like do all these
mhm.
things. And I was like, oh my God, I need to do this.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it was actually my mom who was kind of like that as well. Like, I don't know if she set them up as tests, but like like gradually she would like, just let go of the reins a little more, and I would have these chances to like prove myself that I was like reliable or responsible, like we like malls were a big thing in Thailand when I grew up. Like what you do at the weekend was like go to the mall. And my mom was
Same for me
friends with a
growing
lot
up.
of, yeah, God, I love mall culture. Um, she was often friends with like the parents of my friends, and so they would sit and have coffee for hours, and we would go and walk around the mall, but like every 15 minutes we would have to like keep track of the time and come back and report back and like, do all these little things.
I love that. I also very much like miss mall culture, and I'm like, what would my kids even want to do? Like, how, like, what, what's the activity? What's the kid activity? Because I don't want to be dropping people off at like houses.
Yeah, no, I feel you. Bring back malls. Like I really love mall culture. Even when I like travel and stuff, I love to go walk around the malls just to like see what's up. Mall culture, I would say, is like thriving more in Asia, and I feel like part of that is because it's like really hot out, and so it's there are these kind of like air conditioned spaces that everyone can go to.
That's all I did when I was in the Philippines. Like, we only went into malls because it was like
Wow.
way too hot to be like outside. Okay,
No.
wonderful tangent. But so you're an entrepreneur now. You've always been an entrepreneur, but how did you kind of break your way into, was your medium graphic design?
Well, I mean, I actually went to school for English lit, literature. As I said, went to like a very traditional school, was like closeted creative or whatever, just didn't really understand that like I could have a career in that and make money off it. And then when I graduated, I was in London at the time, that's where I went to school, and I saw like this ad on the tube for this design boot camp. And it was like 0 to 100, like in 12 weeks, you start with no experience, and by the end, like their aim is that you can go and work in the industry. And so I did that in New York, in Midtown, 12-week boot camp. And so
Was this
that's
General Assembly?
no, it's called Shillington.
I haven't
Yeah.
heard of it, but I remember ads like that.
No, yeah, yeah, it's like it's Australian, I think, but they have campuses around the world. And yeah, I really wanted to go to New York, so I did it at the campus there. And so yeah, I feel like I never had a formal training in graphic design. I had this very quick boot camp of like 12 weeks. I had never even opened the Adobe Creative Suite, that type of thing. But yeah, like I feel like that kind of makes sense for me. Never particularly done things the conventional way, and like I really believe for a lot of things like you can teach yourself. Some of the most talented, specifically graphic designers I know, are like self-taught or like definitely didn't go to school. You know what I mean?
I completely agree. I don't really think you need school for most things. My one friend, or my art director, Carolyn, she did go to school for graphic design, but she's like, it's not like I learned how to use the tools. I learned how to think a certain way to like make
Mm.
interesting projects. She went to VCU, but she was like, all of my classes were like, I think one of her classes was called like time and space. And it was just like, how can
Okay.
you, create art and like communicate concepts around time and space. And it was just like a semester of that. And I was like, I want to
That's
go
so
to art school,
interesting.
man.
I know, like there are all these things I would love to do. Like if I wasn't doing what I'm doing, like the food channel, I would love to just like study, and like just have time to immerse myself in all these things. But the boot camp was kind of funny because it's a little bit the opposite of school in the sense that it was very practical, and that's what I wanted because like I had tried to sort of teach myself, and like definitely I don't think that the software like came to me naturally. Like I did not start out as the most technical designer. Where I think I started to move ahead was on the conceptual side and like merging all of these other skills that I had. And so I was like, I really need help here, like kickstarting, actually just using the tools. Um, and getting like, yeah, technical proficiency. So it was kind of like a weird point to enter the industry. Like some people really care about schools. Some of the more like traditional agencies care that you know about like Massimo Vignelli and the whole kind of like history of design. which is always useful. But I don't know, especially when I entered the industry, it was literally February 2020. So that was a very disruptive time in the world, obviously, like literally days before COVID, and everything dramatically changed like during COVID, including people's approach to like work and the background you need to have and like what type of work we're even doing, you know?
Wow, that's so I like didn't register. To me, 2020 is not far away because like those 3 years
I
like of
know.
like true lockdown were is just like 1 year. So I'm like, oh, you haven't actually been a designer like that long. But you also entered at a very chaotic time. What did that look like? I know you put something in our doc here that says like how I cold emailed my way into like my first project, and I was like, this is essentially the brute force story. So I want to hear your brute force into
Oh,
the industry.
absolutely. I'm like such a proponent of the cold email. Like cold emails have kind of been the answer to everything for me, and I'm very much of the idea like, you know, it costs you nothing to ask. Like if you don't ask, you don't get, and you would actually be surprised by like how many people are willing to give. Um, so I finished this boot camp. I fell in love with New York. I really, really loved the energy, and I was like, I want to be in the industry here. And so, obviously, being like an international person, there's like a whole other layer of like coming to work in the US. It's very, very difficult. And so, I needed to find someone who not only wanted to hire me, but was also happy to like sponsor my visa. So, I had to be like very proactive and very kind of persistent in that approach. But I also had a pretty clear idea of like the studios that I wanted to work with. And so I basically there were no openings or anything like that, but I was like, let's see anyway. My approach was like find the CEO, find whoever is like the founder of the agency, and then I basically researched them a ton. Like these are amazing people who have like a lot of interviews, and there are a lot of information about these people. And then I would construct these very tailored cold emails. And like in the subject line, I would put a quote that like they had said in an interview. Because I'm always thinking like, you know, people are busy, you get a lot of emails, like what's something that's gonna catch their eye? So I would put, yeah, something that I thought was interesting that they had said. That was like the subject line that I feel like kind of, I don't know, caught people's eye. And so, yeah, it went from there. And you would also be surprised, like, if you want to work somewhere, just because there isn't a job listing doesn't mean that there isn't a space for you.
I am obsessed. I am literally obsessed. Yeah, this was what did I do? This was something I did when I was in college when I wanted to work in fashion, but I didn't know how to get into fashion. I went to like a podunk. I shouldn't say that. I love my school so much. I just say that we're like they're not known for fashion. It's a state school in Pennsylvania. I went to Penn State, so it's just like we're in Happy Valley. Everyone that goes there studies like golf turf management and like agricultural sciences. So no way anyone's like hiring like a
Mm-hmm.
business student that wants to get into fashion. But I would do the same thing. I was like, okay, let me just like read literally anything because people love to be flattered. If you're like, oh, you read all
Yes,
of my
they do.
stuff and like you're proactive and you want to talk about me, you're like, yes, of course. So that's so awesome,
Absolutely.
man.
Yeah.
Who did you hear back from?
Oh my gosh. This is kind of going back in time, but like at the time, the two places that I really wanted to work were Puerto Rocha and Collins. Those were like my two main ones, and
Are those
I went for an
agencies?
interview. Yeah, yeah, you
Okay.
should look them up. Yeah, they do like specifically for graphic design. And I feel like it's kind of funny. Graphic design, as I learned, was very much its own world. And it's something that is like taken very seriously within the graphic design industry. I feel like there's a whole kind of language that goes on in that world. So yeah, graphic design, but more broadly, I guess like branding agencies, like both of those agencies specifically focus kind of on branding. But Puerto Rico was like pretty new at the time, and they do some of the most kind of dynamic, exciting work. Also, both of the founders were Brazilian, and I lived in Brazil for quite a long time, and it's definitely one of my homes away from home. So that was like a big draw. And then Collins, yeah, has an amazing track record of like really interesting projects and also more of a kind of vagabond mentality, which has always attracted me. So yeah, that was happening, and I was really, really lucky to get offers, and they were going to sponsor my visa. But then COVID happened, and they like paused all of the international visas for like foreign workers. So that ended up like falling through. I had to leave the country. It was so crazy. It was like March 20th. I remember I like booked a flight that day and like went to JFK, and I flew to Thailand. It was all very, surreal. And so then I was out in Thailand for months. Like, didn't have any experience. My dream job had like fallen through because of everything that was going on. And so I had to like go back to the drawing board again. And so I started cold emailing again, but I was freelancing with agencies, but I really wanted to be on the ground. But I was also super interested, obviously, in entrepreneurship and fashion. So I was like, okay, like I want to work with, some fashion brands. And so cold emails again, I would like create concepts for them, like fully come up with the assets and everything, and then like cold email the founder of the brand. And so that also kickstarted me more into like working directly with brands. And I know you in another one of our conversations mentioned like my weather concept. That was like the first thing that I did. And that was the first thing that like got picked up and published. And I feel like that kind of got me a lot of publicity. And so I started to more create these kind of like internet things, internet
Wait,
art.
yes, talk about that project because that I saw that and like I always am a proponent. We talked about content, but I was like, put your stuff out there because like the people that you're like connected, like the people that you'll speak that's it speaks to will really resonate. And I saw this and I said, I'm obsessed with this person. I'm sure we will cross paths. I loved that piece. And I shared it with my
Oh,
art director and we were like, we love her.
thank you so much. It's funny because, like, actually, the earliest work, some of my earliest work, like the very first things that I did, the weather being one of them, is still my favorite work. And it's kind of like when you haven't worked in an industry and you're like naive in a good way. You don't know what the expectations are or like the formats and stuff that you should follow. So I love like the energy and rawness of that early work. But like I was saying to you in one of our other conversations, like a lot of my work, it comes to me very quickly, and I'm very inspired by daily life, which is kind of the foundation for my brand. Like a lot of the work that I did for other brands was work that I wish I could have done for myself, but I didn't have a product yet. But with the weather concept, it was very basic. I wanted to showcase clothes, and I was just thinking to myself, like, okay, like what's my process for getting dressed? And the first thing always is like checking the weather. And a lot of my work at that time, but also still to this day, like definitely focuses on interfaces. I love interfaces, and I'm always trying to reinterpret them and like bridge this connection between like IRL life and URL life, if you will. And so, yeah, immediately I was like, oh my gosh, okay, I need to like get the PNGs, like insert it, like instead of the temperature, you're gonna see the outfit, and then like I cycled through different locations, so you have hot weather, you have cold weather, you have rainy, you have whatever. And that came together super quickly.
What is super quickly for you? Because I know for some creatives, super quickly is like a month, and then other creatives, it's like
No,
a
no,
day.
my Sims concept that was done in like 20 minutes. Like for me, like when the mood strikes, I'm like very quick. I roll it out immediately. I shoot immediately. Editing on some other concepts like might take time, but like I have like tunnel vision. I've always been like a pretty obsessive person, I feel. And like
You
when
have
I'm
the mania.
yeah, I do have the mania. Like I have the mania for sure. And yeah, I remember I was like on vacation once with my mom in like Costa Rica, and at that point, like, because before anything, I was basically a writer. That kind of like underscores everything. That's the thing that I always knew how to do. And so I was like obsessed with like I wanted to get published in like magazines and that type of stuff. And I was making a website, and we were supposed to be like on this vacation in Costa Rica, like hiking and like going to the coffee fields or whatever. And I had just decided, I was like, I need this website. I wasn't a designer at that point. And I sat in the lobby for days designing this website. And she was like, can we go and do something? And I'm like, yeah, like we will, I promise, but like I have to get this done. And so yeah, I feel like if you have the mania, you're generally also like interested in a lot of things. So like when an obsession takes you, you have to like commit to it and like ride it out, like try to get the most out of it while it's there.
That shaky hand when you were like, I was like, yeah, no, I get my mania always strikes at like 10 p.m. and Carolyn
Same
is
here.
my creative soulmate. Honestly, I might text you the next time this happens, but I like because
Feel free.
most of my I will most of my mediums, Carolyn's able to take everything from like my brain and actually make it into like a digital, like something that is actually aligned and like the right font, and I know what is yes and no, but she's like, I will just be your conduit. um
Love it.
until I started making fragrance. And when I get the
Mm.
mania for fragrance, if I hear like a certain, melody in a song, or if I had the mania yesterday and I didn't take myself up on it, which is really bad. Now I have to like recreate the mania. But I was like, I
Mm.
rewatched Nina Simone's interview where they're asking her like what is freedom to her? Like what does freedom feel like?
Mm.
And the mania like immediately hit, and I was like, oh, I know exactly what this fragrance is going to be. I know what it's going to be called. I know like what its tagline is going to be. I can see its entire like color palette. And like my blood pressure goes up, like my heart starts
No,
racing.
look, even you talking about that, I'm having like a bodily reaction because like the mania is very visceral. You know what I mean? It runs away with you and you have to capture it when it comes, because I've also done the thing where I'm like, "Oh, I'll remember that. I'll remember all the details, like I'll write it down or put it together later." And then it's like, lightning in a bottle. So like when it comes, I have to like get it all down immediately. But like I live for that feeling. You know what I mean? Like that
I live
organic
for that feeling.
kind of unbridled state. Like for me, like that's it. Organic creation.
Yes, I have struggled with feeling like with entrepreneurship. I've had to kind of like put guardrails on myself. And now I'm dealing with this really challenging kind of like balancing act of being like, okay, let's be structured and let's be consistent. And let's like be measured, but also still allowing for the mania to come and to kind of push
Mm-hmm.
everything out of the way. I don't know if you have you ever felt like you've struggled with this where you're like, okay, I need to like always show up, but also I need to like
Yes.
save enough so when the mania comes, I can like do it and then also prioritize it.
Yes, this might be a slightly adjacent point, but honestly, one of my biggest struggles, like over the last year, when I've been more like moving towards this new direction, is I felt so much tension between like being a quote unquote artist or creative and being an entrepreneur. And sometimes I feel like being an artist or having taste has actually held me back from being like the best entrepreneur that I could be, because these things are like very interlinked, but I found that there's often trade-offs that have to be made. And I think a lot of people, before they actually try to start something, what they're attracted to is kind of like the creative side of business. But the business side of business to me is like the foundation. And I almost have to, like, the way I've had to frame it to myself is like kind of have to like earn my right to unleash all of the creativity in the way that I want to, but like the business and the building blocks of that foundation have to come first. And so there's like macro and micro examples of this. Something micro maybe would be like, okay, you know what? I'm not going to have the most beautiful packaging in the world or like the craziest unboxing experience right now because it's very expensive to customize that and I need to, spend my funds elsewhere. And then yeah, like even it's we were talking about creative constraints. I feel like that comes into this as well. Like it's weird having worked with some brands that have very large budgets, and like just as a consumer I love to see all this amazing creative, it's very highly produced, they can have any talent in the world, any location, whatever it may be. um but yeah, all that to say that it's a balance. The main yeah, no, that sounds a bit crazy. um
You have a terrible brain. That's not what I was talking about, but I'm laughing still. Yes.
basically yes. the mania is incredible, and I think that sometimes it really creates like the essence and the magic of something. But when you are running a business, it's about kind of like balancing the mania and like harnessing the mania in the most strategic way, which is like not very sexy, and it's not really what people imagine when they think about creativity and artistry and all this kind of stuff. But like it's the reality of business, and I also find business like very beautiful. I love systems. I love like figuring things out. I love puzzles, you know? So like all the like the logistics, the supply chain, like I love that stuff as much as I love like designing and thinking of the campaign and thinking like how to illustrate something.
That's very funny. Not haha funny, but just like yeah. Funny in the sense where you're saying that you feel like the creative side inhibits the entrepreneurial kind of like business side, cuz I have struggled with the same exact problems you're talking about, but mine has always felt the other way. And I do want to talk about like creative
Interesting.
constraints as like a positive. We talked about this I think a little bit the other day about like having like set times. I think it was either Toni Morrison or Nina Simone. We talked about this where it's like, yeah, I always have like creativity strike, but it's always at 9 a.m. And having kind of like the framework around your creativity, then you have like the freedom in that space to be able to be as creative as you want. Um, but I have always felt the reverse. And it was something me and my co founder had a lot of tension over because I was like, we need to have all these nice things and we need to blah, blah, blah. And he was like, we just can't do that right now, dear. Like, you need to get a little bit more resourceful and a little bit more thoughtful. So I'm in the opposite side where I was like, okay, I need to. I guess not even the opposite side, maybe just the same, the opposite side of the same coin of being like, okay, I know if you confine me to like this much space, like the space of a dime, I can still be very expansive in that space, but creating the boundaries of that like dime space is very hard for me.
It is very hard. Like I almost feel like because I went down the whole like design art direction route basically because like when I was in college, I wanted to start a brand. I mean, I always wanted to, but in college, like when I was like 19 or something, I actually, made some steps towards trying to do that. And it was swimwear at the time. And it was also at the time where like Glossier was on the rise, the whole like D2C universe was exploding. And it was my first kind of like close analysis of branding. And I remember looking at Glossier and I was like, this is such a good example. And it just really highlighted the importance of design and aesthetics and like building out the whole world. And I was very, captivated by that. I was like, I want to do that. But it's very expensive to do that. And then I had even less money than I do now. So I was like, I need to learn how to do that so that I don't have to pay someone to do that. That was literally why I ended up in graphic design. But like being in that whole world and like knowing what you could do, I think it can. I feel like it held me back from like the more tech mentality of like move fast and break things. You know what I mean? Like MVP approach. Like, and I
Not you quoting Mark Zuckerberg.
sorry. Like I contain multitudes. My references are diverse. But it's like there is some other quote or whatever. Like people who don't think actually just move faster because they move. Whereas like having knowledge of like branding and like the most beautiful thing and the packaging and the campaign and like knowing what is good can hold you back from actually making steps, like moving in a direction and actually like building something real, like fixating on all that stuff. But I completely understand because I love that stuff too and I have experience in that stuff. So it's like it's almost worse like having to put out an MVP knowing what a final product should be.
Yes, I think that's called like the knowledge gap dilemma or the knowledge dilemma where it's like you know too much and you're too close and then you
Yeah.
like you essentially stall out. Like you need to be kind of like a
Yeah.
little you need to be a little dumb or just like a little like
Yes.
dissociative to
No,
your
literally.
work and just
Yeah.
send it and like put it out.
Yeah. Because I mean, another thing I've learned is I've learned so much more from just putting things out rather than like sitting and trying to, create the perfect thing.
It's the same thing. I love when like things kind of when the same life lessons. I feel like the reason I really love entrepreneurship is because if you approach entrepreneurship the same way you approach like life in a very kind of like principled way, but in a very active, like I'm just going to do in accordance to my values and I'm just going to see what happens. Just like how life rewards you for doing that, business rewards you the same way. And you just have to like kind of actively live through your business. Like I have found, I have a book. Have you read? Sorry, I'm like all over the place. Have you read The E Myth from Michael Gerber? Okay, you need to read this.
No.
This is always on my
No.
desk. I read this in one sitting and I reference it all of the time. It like takes it's essentially like how you systematize your business across every piece, like very much like the McDonald's model of being like, if I needed to just like duplicate this, like control C this whole business and it
Mm-hmm.
still work, this is how you do it. And they use, it's kind of corny, like people have told me, they're like, oh, I don't like the reference, blah, blah, blah. I said, you've missed the whole point of the book. This is the answer to life. Like if there's a business bible,
Yeah.
it's this book. I highly recommend. They use like a woman who's, um, she's like a pie maker, and it
Okay.
both honors kind of like the structure and system and operations of business, but also kind of like the mania. They don't call it the mania in the book, but
Mm-hmm.
it's like the why. But sometimes I feel like the why sounds a little bit too spiritual. But it's like, why did you start
Yeah.
this? And like, what's that visceral kind of like excitement and like bright light that shines in you that makes you want to do it such that you can make a system. I think you will like it. I would book club
I
it with
love
you.
it.
I'd be like, please
I
read it so we can talk about
No,
it.
please. No, I would love it. I also love the title. I feel like that could be my like biography title or something, The E Myth. Um, no, but I love that. And I also feel like something really useful is to like not be judgy about like references or like where things come from. You know what I mean? Like some of the best advice does not come packaged in kind of like a tasteful or like highbrow way. And that's something that I'm always really conscious of. I'm like, there's value to be found anywhere. So I don't know if some people think some something's corny or whatever. Like it doesn't really matter if it helps you. You know what I mean?
I like corny things because I feel corny creates a visceral reaction. Like
Mm.
it's this thing that creates feeling, and if you can create feeling, like that's like 90% of the work. If you can take something corny and then make it beautiful, which is just like a different skill set, then you have like a completely finished product. All of my projects, everything with redo, and people don't believe me, even everything I do now is like a meme or video game reference. Like
I
never,
love
not
that.
one thing is not a meme. I was like, this was probably something on 4chan from like 12 years ago, and I saw it and I said, that's a campaign now.
No, I love that. I think we spoke about this as well. Like, honestly, like a lot of the ideas I have are just to make myself laugh. You know what I mean? A lot of the things that I do, and especially like the creative output and stuff, is kind of like me having like an in joke with myself. And sometimes other people will understand the in joke, and like sometimes it'll completely go over their heads. You know what I mean?
I completely know what you mean. We've kind of thrown away the entire agenda, but I think we talked about majority of the stuff that we mentioned. I love creative constraints. What are you doing right now to like constrain yourself to then
Well,
yield more creative
I
results?
mean, I'm involuntarily constrained, I guess, simply by like lack of resources. Like those are my constraints like set out for me. So I'm really trying to do like the most with the least, like even just like shooting photos and stuff for my brand. Like I got really into filters because I was just like, this is free, and like I'm the only model, so how can I like use something free to make myself look different in all of these different images, but also it did come from a conceptual place, and to me it's like also a commentary on like Gen Z's obsession with beauty and like fear of aging and stuff, because I had the age filter. I did something a few weeks ago that I haven't shared yet, but like I I basically took a photo of myself and I just have like a different hair color and hairstyle in like tons of photos. There was like 12 of them or something, and they're all like different versions of me. I was like, maybe I should make this into a meme of like, oh, meet the teen, because really it is also, a kind of meme when you start a business. It's like you're wearing every single hat. And so, there's 12 team members, they're all me, and they all look a little different. So it's like, it's little things like that. Even, yeah, my Sims, the weather, all of these concepts, they were free to create. And they also were born somewhat from a place of constraint, because I was like, I I'm sitting at home and I have no money. So how can I like still create stuff, And that's like part of the interface that really became a part of my language. It was free.
That broke girl constraint will really bring out the best in
Yeah.
everyone.
But
It's like
I kind of love it, because it actually shows you don't like like you don't need a lot to do something. You just need like energy and willpower, like hopefully at some point I will have huge budgets and I like have so many ideas that I want to share through that, but I'm like, you know for now, it leads you to be more creative. You don't have the paralysis of like choice, you know what I mean?
yes, I actually don't know what I would do if I had like a huge budget from like a creative standpoint. I would just be like, I guess we're all flying here so we can think about another thing that we're not going to spend any money on.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny because like while this is like born from constraint, like my creative style, I also don't know if like I would do that much differently, as you say, because like I'm very much like focused on just the mundane and real life. And so like I don't actually need a big budget, because that's kind of like not real to me. It's not true to most people's lives. I guess what I would love to do is like hire someone who can help me with photography, because like honestly, the number of trysts I've had with my tripod, like putting it on a chair to like get it high enough up so that it's like a proper bird's eye view of me, and like, all of that type of stuff, or like trying to film in public by yourself with a tripod. It's like all of those things are not so easy to do. That's what I'd spend budget on versus, I don't know, some beach shoot in the south of France or whatever.
I will send you, since you mentioned that bird's eye thing. I forced myself to take a break this weekend because I had I don't know if I'm curious if you feel this way. There was like a moment in time, because I'm around perfume so much. I had like the little sprinkling of burnout that was like, I don't even like perfume. And I said, oh, I need to relax. I was like, I need to not do anything. But the mania came in another way, and I was watching this guy that does like interior design and content creation, like talk about like all of his like essentially like his tech stack and like materials. So he just shoots on iPhone. And I was like, I never want to get like a nice camera of my own. I rather just hire someone for it. I was like, all the content I want to use is just from my iPhone. And he like showed this thing. He's like, this is how I get my really high thing. I was like, oh, I'm never gonna shoot that angle, but I will send it to you.
Oh, I would love that. Yeah, I mean, I've literally been like yelling at my tripod, because sometimes I'm like trying to take product shots as well, but it's like the tripod will be in the frame. So I'm like having to angle it inside like the leg of a chair to like so that it won't like show up in the photo. All kinds of like tripod acrobatics. But yeah, like iPhone does the job. I mean, people have shot movies on iPhone, so it's good enough for me.
Exactly. Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like if you want to do something, you literally simply need internet connection, the
Yes.
library, or and a smartphone and an email address. And I was like, you're like good to
Totally.
go.
Yeah.
That's the beginner. What's that? That's the entrepreneur starter kit. It's like
Starter
how to
kit.
get to
Yeah.
$1 million. You only need these three things.
Honestly. And like as well, like I feel like something unexpected, for not unexpected, but just like the felt reality of it was kind of more than I was expecting it to be. Was like, at least for me, like the mental game is like the hardest part of doing all of this, and just like uncertainty every day, and especially when you're starting out, like constantly problem solving. There's like no validation, there's no status, no glory, associated with what you're doing. It's like a lot of very hard work that kind of like goes unseen, and there's no guarantee that you're gonna get a reward for it. So just like keeping motivated and positive every day, and like, yeah, how you're saying like, oh, I do I even like perfume? Like, I don't think sane people do this. And sometimes I'm like, what? Like, this is all self inflicted. Why am I doing this? Because for sure there are easier ways to make money, but it's not just about that. You know what I mean? So sometimes I feel like entrepreneurship is definitely like glamorized a little bit or romanticized. But I think there are some of us out here that like, we just can't do anything else. So, so you're like reoriented back to this, like I never fit into a 9 to 5 or like traditional structures. I need to carve out my own freedom and like to not have any kind of like ceilings on what something can be. So it's almost like by default, like what else would I do?
Someone asked me to lunch recently, and they just wanted to quote pick my brain, which I'm trying to not do that anymore. I'm like I want to be generous, but I also am kind of like that's enough.
Yeah,
But
there's a line for sure.
yeah, I've started telling people that kind of have that like glistening kind of like give me permission to do this thing, or like the hopium, like they're really high on hopium.
Mm.
I'm gonna I say I'm like, hey, just so you know, I'm like treat me like I'm mentally ill. Like this is not um I can see that you're like, "Oh, I want to do what you've done," but I was like, "This is not a nice to have for me. This is a can't live without." So, ask yourself if the project that you're doing is a nice to have because you want the outcome, or is it like will for me, if I am not working on my own thing, my co-founder thinks I'm crazy for this, and I was like, he's a Gemini and he's starting to like come around and understand. But I was like, but if I'm not working on the thing that I specifically want to be working on, which is always my own project,
Mm.
I physically feel like I'm off my life path. Like it's like an
I
out of it like hurts.
I completely agree. I was thinking earlier today, I was like, well, actually, I I made another internet thing that I will post at some point, but it was essentially around the question like, why do you do what you do? But related to the thought that I had earlier today, it's like I want to, leave Earth whenever that may be, knowing that I like gave it everything that I had to like realize whatever my potential is. And so like doing anything else would like feel like a waste to me, And it's like my I think I had another thing where I was like my working life and my life's work. And these two things to me are like completely intertwined. Like it's not about like loving to grind per se, but it's about like purpose. This stuff gives me purpose and meaning. And like if you're someone curious who kind of wants to test the limits of like what you have, this is the perfect vessel to do that. Like entrepreneurship is really like the ultimate self growth journey because like you will be tested and you will learn a lot of things about yourself, but it's also like very rewarding. Like I really don't know what else I would do. Whenever I was doing other things, I had the same feeling as you, and I was also working on things that maybe I shouldn't have been. My own stuff.
I am curious on how you stay motivated. Do you talk to anyone? Is it just like your own internal self practice? Because I've had some dark days. I've had some like really
Oh
like,
my god.
all right, well, I guess yeah, I've shared stories, but just being like, "Oh, I guess that PO didn't go through and now we owe tens of thousands of dollars." And it's not like, "Guess I'll just go to a job."
No, yeah. Do you mean like a therapist or just like anyone in general?
I think there's like different layers, but yeah, like what's your motivation stack?
Okay, my motivation stack. I I'm very motivated by like not having to live a life that I don't want to live. So for me, like the whole like 9 to 5, someone kind of like owning me and my time and what I can do, telling me when or how I can do things, that for me, like I'm running away from that as much as possible. In terms of motivation, like I think there's a bit of a misconception around this. Most people, they're like, oh, like I would love to live the life you live, like because even like prior to explicitly doing entrepreneurship, like I did live a very unstructured life. I freelanced, I worked with whoever I wanted to work with, I lived all over the place, and people kind of like look at that as a dream. But actually, the times when I'm the happiest is when I have like chosen structure within this more kind of free framework. So like having a routine, like having familiarity, like all of that stuff, I need it to maintain my motivation. Like if you have no boundaries at all, like it's too easy to wander. Sorry, this answer is like a little bit meandering, but also yes, Michael Jordan. I'm actually not kidding when I'm like, this guy is an anchor point for me. Like the amount I think about him is probably a bit weird, but like it's like him running, which is also related to him and other athletes. And then just like reflecting back on like hard times in my life or times where I've like really overcome. I really use these anchor points to like bring me back and be like, you know, I've been through worse than this. So like I can weather this storm. And then also just like being able to visualize and like have a long time horizon. I think like if you're someone who like needs a lot of immediate gratification, like entrepreneurship is going to be hell. Like I still feel that pain, but I just like being propelled by something bigger. Like going back to Michael Jordan, I have this video. I don't know if you've seen The Last Dance, but like I can practically quote that thing. It's crazy. And like once I was on a plane, long flight, and I just like recorded all of the parts that really spoke to me, and then edited it into this video. So like on days when I'm really like, hey, I think I want to throw in the towel, I watched this video, and by the end of it, I'm like fired up again. I'm ready to go. So like I think it's really important to have like reference points, even like muscle memory with the runs. Like I can conjure that in my mind, and like it'll help bring me out of like a slump or like a dark moment, you know?
As also an addicted runner or a retired runner, turned gym rat
Mm-hmm.
calisthenics, yeah, like
Oh, I
knowing.
want to talk to you about that then, because
Oh
I want to try
yes.
it. Okay.
When you're here, we can work out. I just got
Yes,
my friend to
I
do
would love that.
her first pull up. She's never done a pull up before, and it took me like 6 weeks to get her to do one
Oh my
pull up. So I was
gosh,
like,
that's
um,
incredible.
but that's really impressive. You sound very like, so you can just do it yourself. You're like, oh, I don't need to talk to anyone. Like I can just be honest. How often do you talk to
Yeah,
Michael Jordan in a day in your head?
in my head, honestly, like at least once. Like I always think about him, like because and his trainer Tim Grover. He's the other person that I think about. Like he has this quote that I was thinking about today that was like, you know, like receiving the information is free. There's no cost to that. The cost comes with what we do with the information, and most people aren't willing to do that. So I guess it kind of relates back to this like high agency thing that we were talking about earlier. You know what I mean? Like Michael Jordan was perhaps like one of the most high agency individuals who basically like willed the Bulls, 90s Bulls, into like, you know, being a triple championship team, or six times actually. But like, yeah, I I also like have lived a weird life where like I've been quite untethered, and I've lived in loads and loads of different countries for like, you know, these kind of fleeting periods of time. So like I have to have a lot of conversations with my head. I have a lot of long distance friendships, which is something that now I feel like I'm at the point where I'm like, no, I want to be in person. I want real life collaboration and community. But honestly, like for the last 6 years, I've kind of been in airspace, like literally and figuratively. So I've had to like, you know, corral these reference points of like voices in my head or like things that I've decided to believe to kind of like keep me anchored and keep me motivated.
We are almost at time, but just like
Oh my
before,
gosh.
I feel like I can talk to you for hours, and
Me too.
I
For hours.
I'm like literally for hours. I'm really excited for you to come to New York. I want us to do a silly little mania project. I don't know what it'll be, but I'm sure as we sit and talk, something manic will explode out of us.
Oh yes.
Um, but tell people where to find you and where to find your brand because you didn't even say the name of your brand. You didn't even talk about it, ma'am.
Okay, well, my brand is called Nabnian, which is my last name. That's Nabnian. It is phonetic, but people do seem to struggle with it. It's also not Armenian, which is another regular question. And kind of like I was saying to you, I chose that name so that it could kind of evolve with me and my interests. So yeah, you can find me at the website nabnian.com or Emily Nabnian on Instagram. And I will be posting to TikTok later that week. That's my goal this week is to get back on TikTok. So yeah.
I love that. My air sign side of me, I know you're a Scorpio, so I know Scorpios don't like
Mm-hmm.
this. So I'm saying this with, I'm
Oh.
trying to translate from like air sign to Scorpio.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, we should feed each other's mania every day. Like I'm gonna start texting you. I'm gonna be kind of annoying. I'm
Do
gonna
it.
be
No,
like,
I need that. Honestly, like I'm looking for that in my life right now. Like I've definitely been on this kind of like isolation journey and like I don't have a lot of friends who are also entrepreneurs, so like it's really kind of like I've been in this tunnel and I want to exchange mania. I want to harness mania. I want to like cuz when you're surrounded by other people who are, have the mania or are motivated, it just leads to like magnification of everything. And I also feel like, separately there's a lot of stuff that I would love to talk about with you, just about business and like, getting down into like the nitty gritty details.
it's going to start this week. It's going to start after
Yes.
this call. It's going to start
Yes.
immediately. But Emily, thank you for joining. This was a treat. You're going to have to come back on. We're going to have a mania
Oh,
session. I'm going to
I would love
call
to.
Diana. I'm going to be like, kick up the riverside. We have to
Oh
show what a
yeah.
manic episode looks like.
Oh, we should do it at night, like if you're saying like 9 p.m., 9 p.m., let's do like a midnight mania. But thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you. I love the podcast. I love Redo. I love everything that you do. And I can't wait.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.